The enduring hope moved slowly through the darkness of space, its silver hull catching the light of distant stars. Captain Samuel Gray stood at the observation window of his ship, watching as the massive orbital station of Volanthos Prime grew larger in the distance. It was a beautiful structure built from crystals that glowed with soft blue and purple light. The station was home to the Volanthi. It's one of the oldest and most respected species in the Galactic Concord. Humanity had joined the Concord only 15 years ago. In galactic terms, humans were babies, newcomers to a community that had existed for over 12,000 years. The Concord included 4,200 different alien species, and they had maintained peace across thousands of worlds for longer than human. Civilization had existed on Earth. Samuel was proud to command this mission. It was supposed to be simple. His ship carried trade goods and a diplomatic team. They would meet with the Volanthi, exchange gifts according to galactic custom, and negotiate a new trade agreement. Nothing complicated. Nothing dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos walked onto the bridge. She was the ship's cultural liaison officer, responsible for making sure humans did not accidentally offend their alien hosts. Maria had spent 3 years studying Volanthi culture. She knew their language, their customs, their history. She was the best person for this job. "Captain, we're ready for docking," she said. Her voice was calm and professional, but Samuel could see the excitement in her eyes. This would be her first time meeting actual Volanthi. She had only studied them through books and recordings. "Good work, Maria," Samuel replied. "Remember, everything by the book. The Volanthi value tradition above all else." Maria nodded. She carried a ceramic vase in a protective case. It was humanity's gift to the Volanthi High Minister. The vase was decorated with geometric patterns that, according to the Universal Translation Database, represented harmony and friendship in Volanthi culture. Maria had checked the database 3 times to make sure. The ship docked without problems. Samuel led his team through the crystal corridors of the station. Everything on Volanthos Prime seemed to glow from within. The walls, the floor, even the air itself seemed to shimmer with gentle light. It was the most beautiful place Samuel had ever seen. The Volanthi High Minister waited for them in the ceremonial chamber. The alien was 12 feet tall, with a body like a giant mantis made of living crystal. Light moved through its transparent form, creating patterns that changed with its emotions. Right now, those patterns were calm and welcoming. "Humans of Earth," the High Minister said through a translator device. "We welcome you to our home. May this meeting bring prosperity to both our peoples." Samuel bowed respectfully. "High Minister, we are honored by your welcome. We bring gifts as a symbol of our desire for friendship." He gestured to Maria. This was her moment. She stepped forward, opened the case, presented the ceramic vase to the Volanthi delegation. For a moment, nothing happened. The High Minister looked at the vase. The patterns of light in its body slowed down, then stopped completely. Samuel did not know much about Volanthi biology, but he knew that was not a good sign. Then the High Minister made a sound. It was a high-pitched noise that seemed to shake the air itself. The other Volanthi in the room backed away, their crystal bodies flashing with red and black patterns. The High Minister collapsed. Samuel rushed forward. But the Volanthi guards blocked his path. Their crystal limbs had formed into sharp points that looked very much like weapons. "What happened?" Samuel demanded. "We need to help." "You have done enough, human," one of the guards said. Its voice was cold and flat. "You have presented the curse of eternal darkness to our High Minister. You have wished death upon his entire ancestral line. This is the greatest insult in our culture." Maria's face went white. "No," she whispered. "The database said those patterns meant friendship. I checked it 3 times. Your database is wrong," the guard replied. "You will leave this station immediately. Do not return." The next few hours were a nightmare. Samuel and his crew were escorted back to their ship at weapon point. The High Minister was carried away by medical personnel. The Volanthi refused to speak any more words to the humans. As the enduring hope undocked from the station, Samuel received a transmission from Earth. Director Patricia Coleman appeared on his screen. She was the head of Earth's Galactic Affairs Office, the woman responsible for humanity's relationships with other species. Captain Gray? What happened? She asked. Her face was tense with worry. Samuel explained everything. He watched Patricia's expression grow more and more troubled as he spoke. This is a disaster, Patricia said when he finished. The Volanthi are one of the founding species of the Concord. They have influence over thousands of worlds. If they turn against us, I know, Samuel said quietly. I know. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species in the Concord knew what had happened. Humanity, the newcomers, had insulted the sacred traditions of one of the most respected species in known space. Trade deals were canceled. Human ships were turned away from ports across the galaxy. Other species looked at humanity with new suspicion. Perhaps these Earth creatures were not ready for galactic civilization after all. Perhaps they were too young, too ignorant, too dangerous. On the enduring hope, Maria locked herself in her quarters. She refused to eat. She refused to speak to anyone. Samuel could hear her crying through the door. He wanted to help her, but he did not know what to say. He thought about his grandfather, a man who had fought in the last great war on Earth. His grandfather had done terrible things during that war, things that haunted him until his death. But in his final years, he had tried to make amends. He had traveled to places he had harmed and apologized to people he had wronged. Healing begins with acknowledgement. His grandfather had told him once, "You cannot fix what you refuse to see." Samuel stood outside Maria's door for a long time thinking about those words. He did not know yet how important they would become. He did not know that this incident, this terrible mistake, changed the entire galaxy forever. All he knew was that humanity was in serious trouble, and he had no idea how to fix it. Back on Earth, Patricia Coleman sat alone in her office. Messages flooded her computer from angry alien governments and terrified human colonies. She had worked for 30 years to build humanity's place in the galaxy. Now, it seemed like everything was falling apart. She looked out her window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, among those distant stars, trillions of aliens were judging humanity. Most of them expected humans to do what every other young species had done when caught in such scandals. They expected denial. They expected excuses. They expected humanity to hide from their mistake until everyone forgot about it. Patricia did not know it yet. But humanity was about to do something completely different. Something that no species in 12,000 years of galactic history had ever done before, and that something would change everything. The global Senate building in Geneva was filled with shouting voices. Senators from every nation on Earth had gathered for an emergency session. The future of humanity's place in the galaxy was at stake, and everyone had an opinion about what should be done. We must blame the translation software, Senator Karl Weber from Germany shouted. It was a technical error. We are not responsible for a computer mistake. We should say nothing at all, argued Senator Yuki Tanaka from Japan. If we wait long enough, the galaxy will forget this incident. Other scandals will take its place. We need to show strength, declared Senator Marcus Williams from the United States. If we appear weak, other species will take advantage of us. We should demand that the Volanthi accept that it was an honest mistake. The arguments went back and forth for hours. No one could agree on anything. The shouting grew louder and more desperate as time passed. Then a single voice cut through the noise. "May I speak?" The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood at his seat in the back of the room. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. Before becoming a diplomat, he had been a history professor for 30 years. He was known as a quiet man who rarely raised his voice. "Ambassador Carter," the Senate president said, "you have the floor." Daniel walked slowly to the speaking platform. He did not hurry. He looked around the room at all the worried faces, all the frightened people trying to protect humanity's future. "I have been listening to your suggestions," he said. "Blame the computer. Stay silent. Show strength. These are all strategies that might work in human politics. But we are not dealing with humans. We are dealing with the Galactic Concord." He paused to let his words sink in. "I have studied the Concord's history extensively. 12,000 years of records from over 4,000 species. Do you know how many times a species has publicly apologized for a mistake in all that time? No one answered. 0, Daniel said. Not once. When species make mistakes, they deny responsibility. They blame individuals. They wait for the scandal to pass. This is how galactic politics works. This is what everyone expects us to do. Senator Weber stood up. Then we should do the same thing. Why be different? Because being different is our only advantage, Daniel replied. Humanity is young. We are weak. We have no military power, no economic influence, no political connections. In a galaxy of ancient civilizations, we are nothing special. Except for one thing. He looked around the room again. We have the ability to do something that no other species has ever done. We can take responsibility for our mistake. We can apologize. Truly apologize. Not a diplomatic statement filled with careful language. A real apology from our hearts, without excuses or conditions. The chamber exploded with protests. That would be suicide. Someone shouted, "We would look weak." Another voice cried, "The other species would destroy us." Daniel waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke again, his voice was calm but firm. I have spent my life studying human history. I have seen what happens when nations refuse to acknowledge their wrongs. Wounds fester. Hatred grows. Conflicts last for generations. But I have also seen what happens when someone has the courage to say those simple words, "I am sorry." He told them about ancient enemies who became allies after one side admitted fault. He told them about families torn apart by pride who were reunited by humility. He told them about wars that ended not with victory, but with acknowledgement. The apologies that changed history were never seen as weakness, Daniel said. They were seen as strength. The strength to face truth. The strength to value peace over pride. The strength to care more about healing than winning. The room was quiet now. People were listening. I propose that we do something unprecedented, Daniel continued. We broadcast a formal apology to the entire galactic concord. Not just to the Valanthi, but to everyone. We admit our mistake. We take full responsibility. We ask for forgiveness and the opportunity to make amends. Senator Williams shook his head. And if they see it as weakness? If they decide to punish us further? Then at least we will have acted with honor, Daniel replied. At least we will have shown the galaxy who we truly are. And who we are as a species that values truth over convenience, healing over hiding, and relationships over reputation. The debate continued for 3 more days. Many senators were afraid. Many thought Daniel's plan was foolish and dangerous. But slowly, one by one, they began to change their minds. There was something about Daniel's words that touched them. Something about the idea of being honest, truly honest, that felt right. Humanity had made a terrible mistake. Pretending otherwise felt wrong. It felt like lying. And whatever else humans were, they did not want to be liars. On the 4th day, the Senate voted. It was close, but Daniel's proposal passed. Word reached the enduring hope. Still traveling through space on its way back to Earth, Captain Samuel Gray called his crew together to tell them the news. When he explained the plan, he saw something change in their faces. Fear was replaced by something else. Pride, perhaps, or hope. He went to Maria Santos's quarters and knocked on her door. This time she opened it. Her eyes were red from crying and she looked exhausted. But she was listening. They're going to apologize, Samuel told her. A real apology. To the whole galaxy. Maria stared at him. But that's never been done before. No species has ever. I know, Samuel said. They want you to be part of it. They want you to speak too. To offer your own apology? Maria's hands trembled. I can't. I'm the one who caused this. Everyone hates me. Samuel sat down across from her. He thought about his grandfather again, about the stories of making amends. Maria, you made a mistake. A terrible mistake with terrible consequences. Nothing can change that. But you can choose what happens next. You can hide from your mistake, or you can face it. You can let it define you as a failure, or you can let it be the beginning of something better. Tears ran down Maria's face. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, Samuel said. So am I. So is everyone. But sometimes being scared and doing the right thing anyway is what makes us human. Maria was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter was preparing for the most important speech of his life. He wrote and rewrote his words dozens of times. He practiced in front of mirrors. He barely slept. His wife found him at his desk one night, staring at a blank page. Are you all right? She asked. Daniel shook his head. I'm asking humanity to do something that has never been done before. What if I'm wrong? What if this destroys us? His wife put her hand on his shoulder. What if it saves us? Daniel looked up at her. He thought about all the apologies in human history. The ones that healed. The ones that transformed enemies into friends. The ones that showed the world that admitting fault was not weakness, but the truest form of strength. I have to try, he said quietly. Whatever happens, I have to try. 3 weeks after the incident, everything was ready. The broadcast would reach every corner of the Galactic Concord. Trillions of alien beings would be watching. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. And one old professor was about to change the Desia's galaxy forever. The transmission began at exactly noon, Earth time. Every communication channel in the Galactic Concord received the signals simultaneously. On thousands of worlds, in millions of homes and ships and stations, aliens of every species stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to the broadcast from that small blue planet called Earth. They expected a defense. They expected excuses. They expected the same political games that every species played when caught in scandal. What they received was something completely different. Daniel Carter stood alone in a simple room. The walls behind him were plain white. He wore no ceremonial robes, no symbols of office, no medals or decorations. He was just a man, standing in a room, speaking to the galaxy. My name is Daniel Carter, he began. His voice was calm and steady. I speak today on behalf of humanity. I speak to the Valanthi people and to all species of the Galactic Concord. I speak to you not as a politician, but as a human being. On Valanthos Prime, the Valanthi High Minister watched from his recovery chamber. He had survived the shock of the incident, but his body was still weak. His advisors had tried to stop him from watching the broadcast, but he insisted. What are they doing? One advisor asked. Where are the lawyers? Where are the official statements? The High Minister raised a crystal limb for silence. Let him speak, he said. Daniel continued. 3 weeks ago, a representative of humanity caused great harm to the Valanthi people. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, acting in good faith, presented a gift decorated with symbols that she believed represented friendship. She was wrong. Those symbols carried a terrible meaning in Valanthi culture. They represented a curse of death upon the High Minister and all his ancestors. Across the galaxy, viewers leaned closer to their screens. This was unusual. No species admitted fault so directly. No species described their own wrongdoing with such clarity. I want to be very clear about something, Daniel said. Our translation database contained an error. Maria Santos relied on that database. She did not intend to cause harm, but her intentions do not erase the harm that was caused. The Valanthi people were hurt. Their sacred traditions were violated. Their leader was struck down in his own ceremonial chamber. These things happened because of our actions. The High Minister's advisors exchanged confused looks. Where was the deflection? Where was the blame being shifted to the faulty computer? Some have suggested that we should blame the translation software, Daniel continued, as if reading their thoughts. Some have suggested that because Maria did not know what she was doing, humanity bears no responsibility. I reject these suggestions. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried deep emotion. Ignorance is not an excuse. Lack of intention does not erase consequences. We are a young species. We have much to learn. But youth is not an excuse either. We chose to enter the galactic community. We chose to engage in diplomatic relations with species whose cultures we did not fully understand. That choice carried responsibility. We failed to meet that responsibility. On a military ship of the Korvathi Empire, a warrior named Thokvernisson watched with growing fascination. The Korvathi were known throughout the galaxy for their strict honor codes. To admit fault publicly was considered the greatest shame in their culture. Yet watching this human speak, Thok felt something stirring in his chest. Not contempt. Something else. Daniel took a deep breath. On behalf of humanity, I offer our sincere and unconditional apology to the Valanthi people. We are sorry. We are truly, deeply sorry for the harm we have caused. We do not ask you to forget what happened. We do not ask you to pretend it did not matter. We only ask for the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to do better. Then he did something that made every alien viewer freeze in complete confusion. He bowed. A deep, respectful bow of genuine humility. We place ourselves at the mercy of the Valanthi people, he said. Whatever you decide is fair, we will accept. Whatever you require to make amends, we will provide. We ask nothing in return except the chance to prove that humanity can be worthy of the galactic concord. The High Minister felt his crystal body grow warm. In 3,000 years of galactic politics, he had never witnessed anything like this. No deflection, no conditions, no careful diplomatic language designed to admit everything while accepting nothing. But Daniel was not finished. He gestured to someone off-screen, and Maria Santos walked into view. She stood beside Daniel, her face pale but determined. Tears were visible in her eyes, but she did not look away from camera. My name is Maria Santos, she said. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I am the one who presented the gift. I am the one who caused this harm. She took a shaky breath. For 3 weeks I have wanted to disappear. I have wanted to hide from what I did. The shame has been almost too much to bear. But hiding would only add to my failure. Running away would only prove that I am too weak to face the consequences of my actions. On Valanthos Prime, the High Minister leaned forward. His advisors noticed that the patterns of light in his body had changed. The red and black of anger were fading, replaced by something softer. I stand before the Valanthi people and the entire galaxy to say that I am sorry, Maria continued. I am sorry for my ignorance. I am sorry for my carelessness. I am sorry for the pain I caused the High Minister and his people. If I could take back what I did, I would, but I cannot. All I can do is face what I have done and accept whatever consequences you believe are just. She paused. Struggling to control her emotions, I have spent the past 3 weeks studying Valantha culture more deeply than ever before. I understand now, at least partly, how terrible my mistake was. The symbols I presented carried meanings that went back thousands of years. I violated something sacred. I know that my apology cannot undo that violation, but I hope it can be the beginning of healing. I hope that someday I might be given the chance to show the Valanthi people who I truly am, and who humanity truly is. She bowed as Daniel had done, and then the broadcast ended. For several seconds, silence covered the galaxy. Trillions of beings sat in stunned disbelief. Then, slowly, the reactions began. On the Korvathi ship, Thokvernisson stood up from his seat. His warriors looked at him expectantly. Contact Earth, he said. I wish to speak with these humans. On a water world called Meldrin, the elders of the ruling council gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. For 800 years they had held a grudge against the Fenari people over an ancient mining dispute. Neither side had ever acknowledged fault. Neither side had ever apologized. The wound had simply festered. Is it possible? One elder asked. Is it possible that such honesty could work? On Valanthos Prime, the High Minister slowly rose from his bed. His advisors rushed to help him, but he waved them away. They asked. To convene the High Council, he replied, we must discuss the humans. We must decide how to respond, but you are still weak. The High Minister's body glowed with soft golden light. It was the color of deep thought, of ancient wisdom being applied to new situations. "I've lived for 3,000 years," he said. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wars and peace treaties and scandals beyond counting. But I have never in all my long life seen anything like what those humans just did." He moved toward the door, his crystal limbs carrying him with renewed strength. "The galaxy will never be the same after today," he said, "and I intend to be part of what comes next." Across the galactic concord, similar conversations were happening. The humans had done the impossible. They had apologized. Really, truly apologized. And now the galaxy had to decide what that meant. The days following the broadcast were chaotic. No one in the galactic concord knew how to react. For 12,000 years, the rules of galactic politics had been clear. Species did not admit fault. Species did not apologize. Species protected their pride above all else. And then the humans had broken all the rules, though Keika Vernison was the first alien to respond. The Corvathi warrior contacted Earth's diplomatic office within hours of the broadcast. His message was short and direct, as was the Corvathi way. "I'm Thok Vernison, commander of the Corvathi vessel Iron Will. I request permission to speak with Ambassador Daniel Carter. The humans have shown something I did not know existed. I wish to understand it." When Daniel received the message, he was surprised. The Corvathi were famous for their rigid honor codes. In their culture, admitting fault publicly was considered the ultimate shame. A Corvathi who made a mistake was expected to either deny it or die trying to fix it. But Thok was not asking about shame. He was asking about something else. "Ambassador Carter," Thok said, when they finally spoke face-to-face via video link. "I have fought in 37 battles. I have commanded ships and armies. I have been wounded 17 times. In all my years, I believe that strength meant never showing weakness. I believe that honor meant never admitting fault." He paused. His scarred face was difficult to read, but his voice carried deep emotion. "Watching your broadcast, I felt something I cannot name. When you apologized, when the woman apologized, I expected to feel contempt. I expected to see weakness. Instead, I saw something that looked like ... courage. True courage. The courage to face truth even when truth is painful." Daniel nodded slowly. "In human culture, we have a saying, 'It takes more strength to admit you were wrong than to insist you were right.'" Thok was quiet for a long moment. "I have done things in my life that I regret. Things I have never spoken about. I always believed that speaking about them would make me weak. But watching you, I wonder if silence was the true weakness all along." This conversation was just the beginning. Within weeks, similar discussions were happening across the galaxy. On Valanthos Prime, the High Council gathered to decide humanity's fate. The chamber was filled with ancient Valanthi, beings who had lived for thousands of years and seen countless species come and go. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had witnessed betrayals and alliances without number. The eldest among them was called simply the Voice of Memory. He was so old that no one remembered his original name. His crystal body had turned almost completely white with age, but his mind remained sharp. "I wish to speak of something from our ancient texts," the voice said. His voice was soft, but every being in the chamber fell silent to listen. "Long ago, before the Concord existed, our ancestors wrote of a spiritual concept called the unburdening of the soul through truth. It was described as the highest form of courage, the willingness to face one's own failures openly. Without defense or excuse, our ancestors believed this was the path to true peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "For thousands of years, we have treated this concept as a legend, a beautiful idea that no species could actually practice. We believed that all intelligent beings were too proud, too afraid, to ever truly embrace such honesty." The Voice of Memory turned his ancient eyes toward the chamber's main screen, where a recording of Daniel's apology was playing silently. "These humans have done what we believed impossible. They have practiced the unburdening of the soul, and they have done it not in private, but before the entire galaxy." Another council member spoke up. "But what does this mean for us? How should we respond?" The High Minister, still recovering from his collapse, answered, I believe we should accept their apology. More than accept it. I believe we should honor it. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Honor it. They insulted our most sacred traditions. The High Minister raised a crystal limb for silence. Yes, they did. And they admitted it. They took full responsibility. They offered to make amends in any way we demand. In all my 3,000 years, no species has ever done this. Do we punish the first species brave enough to be honest? Or do we reward their courage and encourage others to follow? The debate continued for many hours, but in the end, the council reached a decision that surprised the entire galaxy. They not only accepted humanity's apology, they invited Maria Santos to visit Volanthos Prime as a guest of honor. Not to be judged or punished, but to learn. They wanted to teach her their culture properly. And they wanted to learn about the human tradition that had made such an apology possible. The news spread like wildfire. Through the Concord, other species began to examine their own histories. On Meldron, the water world, the elders finally addressed their 800-year grudge against the Fenari. We have been silent for too long, the eldest Meldrani said. Perhaps it is time we learned from the humans. A delegation was sent to the Fenari homeworld. For the first time in 8 centuries, representatives from both species sat together and spoke honestly about what had happened. It was difficult. Old wounds were reopened. Old anger flared. But slowly, painfully, healing began. On a dozen worlds, then 100, then 1,000, similar things were happening. Species that had nursed grudges for generations were suddenly finding the courage to speak the truth. Old conflicts were being addressed. Ancient wrongs were being acknowledged. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it. Maria Santos arrived on Volanthos Prime 3 months after the incident. She was terrified. Despite the council's invitation, she expected to be treated with coldness, perhaps even hostility. Instead, she found something completely different. The Volanthi welcomed her with genuine warmth. They showed her their temples, their libraries, their sacred places. They explained the true meaning of the symbols she had unknowingly misused. They helped her understand why her mistake had been so devastating, but they also listened. They asked about human culture. They wanted to know why humans had developed such a strong tradition of apology. They wanted to understand how a species could teach its children that admitting fault was strength rather than weakness. Maria told them about human history. She told them about wars that ended with forgiveness, about families reunited after years of silence, about nations that had once been enemies becoming the closest of allies. She told them that humans were not perfect, that they often failed to apologize when they should, that pride and fear made them silent when they should speak. But we keep trying, she said. We believe that truth is worth the pain. We believe that healing is worth the risk. And we believe that relationships matter more than being right. The Volanthi listened carefully. The more they learned about humanity, the more fascinated they became. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter watched these developments with quiet amazement. He had hoped the apology might improve humanity's situation. He had never imagined it would transform the entire galaxy. Messages flooded his office from species across the Concord. They wanted to know more about human diplomatic traditions. They wanted to learn the techniques of what they were calling the human way. They wanted to understand how to apologize, how to forgive, how to heal. Daniel did his best to respond to everyone. He gave interviews. He wrote explanations. He traveled to alien worlds to speak about the power of honesty, but he always emphasized one thing: this is not something unique to humans. Every intelligent species has the capacity for truth. Every being can choose honesty over pride. We simply made that choice visible. We hope others will make the same choice. And they did. Slowly, carefully, one conversation at a time, the galaxy was learning a new way to resolve conflict. It was not perfect. Old habits died hard. Many species resisted the change, but the seed had been planted, and it was growing. 5 years had passed since the incident that nearly destroyed humanity's place in the galaxy. 5 years since a simple ceramic vase caused an interstellar crisis. 5 years since one man stood before the universe and said the words that no species had ever spoken before. Now, Daniel Carter stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Concord. The chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from thousands of species. Beings of every shape and size filled the seats around him: crystalline Valanthi, scarred Korvathi warriors, flowing Meldrani in their water tanks, and countless others whose forms defied human description. They had gathered to witness something historic. Daniel Carter was being appointed to a newly created position, Concord Cultural Mediator. His role would be to help species navigate misunderstandings and conflicts using the methods that had become known throughout the galaxy as the human way. As Daniel walked to the central platform, he remembered the terrified old man who had stood before Earth's Senate 5 years ago, proposing an idea that everyone thought was crazy. He remembered the sleepless nights, the doubt, the fear that he was leading humanity to destruction. He had been so afraid. They all had, but they had done it anyway. The Concord president, a massive being with 6 arms and skin like flowing mercury, addressed the assembly. 5 years ago, humanity stood at the edge of ruin. A single mistake threatened to destroy their reputation and their future. Most species would have hidden from such shame. Most species would have denied or deflected. But the humans did something unprecedented. They took responsibility. They apologized. They opened their hearts to the galaxy. The president gestured toward Daniel, and the galaxy responded. In these 5 years, we have seen more ancient conflicts resolved than in the previous 5 centuries combined. We have seen species that were enemies for generations sit together and speak truth. We have seen wounds heal that we believed would never close. Daniel bowed his head in acknowledgement. Daniel Carter did not create the human way. He simply reminded us of something we had forgotten. That honesty is not weakness. That admitting fault is not failure. That the courage to face truth is the foundation of all genuine peace. Assembly erupted in applause. Beings who had spent their lives viewing humanity as ignorant newcomers now looked upon them with respect, even admiration. But the greatest honor came later. When Maria Santos received her own recognition, in the 5 years since the incident, Maria had become the first human to be granted Volanthe spiritual citizenship. She had lived on Volantho's prime, learning their culture more deeply than any outsider in history. She had written 3 books on cross-cultural communication that were now required reading at diplomatic academies across 12 sectors of space. The same woman who had once locked herself in her quarters, crying with shame, now stood before the Volanthe High Council as an honored member of their community, the High Minister, fully recovered and glowing with health, presented her with the Crystal of Understanding, an artifact that had not been given to any outsider in over 4,000 years. "You came to us broken by your mistake," the High Minister said. "You could have let that mistake define you forever. Instead, you transformed it into wisdom. You became a bridge between our peoples. You showed us that growth is always possible for those brave enough to face themselves honestly." Maria accepted the crystal with tears in her eyes. But this time, they were tears of joy. Across the galaxy, the changes continued. The phrase "to apologize like a human" had entered common usage in dozens of languages. It meant to take responsibility fully, without deflection, and to seek genuine reconciliation rather than mere resolution. It was considered the highest form of diplomatic courage. Young diplomats of every species studied human history, fascinated by the strange tradition that had transformed galactic relations. They learned about the wars that ended with forgiveness, the enemies who became friends, the moments when a single honest word opened doors that centuries of negotiation could not. On Earth, Admiral Samuel Gray stood before a graduating class of cadets preparing for deep space assignments. He was older now, his hair almost completely gray, but his eyes were still sharp and his voice still carried across the hall. "When I was your age," he told them, "humanity was a joke in the galaxy. We were the newcomers who insulted the Volanthe. We were the fools who almost destroyed our own future. Everyone expected us to fail." He paused, looking at the young faces before him. "But we did not fail. Not because we were stronger than other species. Not because we were smarter or more advanced. We succeeded because we had the courage to be honest. We succeeded because when we made a mistake, we admitted it. We succeeded because we valued truth over pride. He walked among the cadets, his footsteps echoing in the silent hall. No. You are going out into a galaxy that now looks to humanity for guidance. Not because we are perfect, we are far from perfect, but because we showed the universe that imperfection is not something to hide. It is something to acknowledge, to learn from, to grow beyond. He stopped at the front of the room. Remember this, wherever you go. The strength of humanity has never been in our technology or our military capability. Our strength is in our willingness to face ourselves honestly. Our strength is in our ability to say those simple, powerful words, I am sorry. On Valanthos Prime, in a school for young Valanthi children, a small crystal being raised her limb to ask her teacher a question. Teacher, can you tell me about the humans? The teacher, an elderly Valanthi with patterns of deep purple flowing through her transparent body, smiled at the child's curiosity. What would you like to know? My parent says they are special, different from other species. Why? The teacher considered the question carefully. How could she explain something so profound to one so young? Long ago, she began, the galaxy had forgotten something important. We had forgotten that it was okay to make mistakes, as long as we were honest about them. We had forgotten that admitting we were wrong was not shameful, but brave. We spent thousands of years pretending to be perfect, and that pretending caused great pain. The child listened with wide, glowing eyes. Then the humans came. They were young and ignorant and made many mistakes, but when they made mistakes, they did something strange. They admitted it. They said they were sorry. They asked how they could do better. Was that hard? The child asked. It's very hard, the teacher replied. The hardest thing any species can do. But they did it anyway. And by doing it, they reminded the galaxy of something we had forgotten. That strength is not found in being right. Strength is found in being honest. And that sometimes, the most powerful thing anyone can say is simply, I am sorry. The child thought about this for a long moment. Then her small body glowed with the soft gold of deep thought, just like the elders. Teacher, can I meet a human someday? The teacher smiled warmly. It was a gesture she had learned from watching human broadcasts, and it still felt new on her crystal features. Someday, she promised. Someday soon. Outside the school, the crystals of Valanthos Prime caught the light of their 3 suns and scattered rainbows across the sky. Ships from 100 worlds moved peacefully through orbit, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible just 5 years ago. And somewhere in the galaxy, an old man sat quietly in his study, reading reports of conflicts resolved and friendships formed. Daniel Carter had never wanted to be famous. He had never wanted to change history. He had simply wanted to do the right thing. But sometimes, doing the right thing changes everything. He looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, trillions of beings were learning to be honest with each other. Trillions of beings were discovering that vulnerability was saint,